Hawaii typically sits near the top on lists ranking lifestyle, tourist appeal, and cultural diversity. But when it comes to doing business, the Aloha State seems to have no aloha. Our business climate often ranks at or near the bottom. So what can state and county lawmakers do to improve the climate for business? And would a better relationship between small business and government help to strengthen our economy? As part of our continuing series of live broadcasts covering the important issues during this 2016 election season, we'll discuss the challenges facing Hawaii's small business owners and explore possible political solution. Insights on PBS Hawaii is next. Aloha, I'm Daryl Huff from Hawaii News Now. Welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. In every election year, candidates for state and county office claim great concern for our economy, and many talk about improving the business climate, creating jobs, and diversifying the economy. But what does that really mean? And are politicians really willing to do what it takes to improve our business climate? Tonight, what do small businesses really need from our government? We hope you will participate in tonight's discussion. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org. Joining us tonight are Senator Glenn Wakai, the state senator representing the district that includes Kalihi, Salt Lake, Wanalua, and Pearl Harbor. He's also the current chair of the State Senate's Committee on Economic Development and Technology. Michael Fernandez-Soria is the founder of Hawaiian Cool Water, a Honolulu-based company that manufactures and sells filtered water coolers which eliminate the need for plastic water bottles. Kari Waldhaus owns and manages the UPS store in Kamoela on the Big Island and is a business coach for small business owners. And Cam Napier is editor-in-chief of Pacific Business News. Mr. Napier oversees all news operations and content for the publication. For the benefit of our viewers and our guests, we've organized tonight's show into 4 different sections on regulations, healthcare, minimum wage, and solutions. We will start tonight by talking about some of the numerous regulations and taxes small businesses have to deal with. Let me start with Michael Hernandez-Soria. Tell me first of all, tell me a little bit about your company and what you've gone through in order to get yourself up and running when it comes to the regulatory environment.
Well, I think any small business is going to tell you that getting off the ground from the very beginning is a real struggle. I think one of the things that we took advantage of was we had trouble getting a lease from a landlord, especially when we first started. We had no operating history. And I think a lot of landlords want to see that you're a profitable business before they'll rent you any space other than a self-storage facility. Which is where we actually started out of. But once we grew out of that and wanted a lease, there were no landlords that would lease us an appropriate space for our business. And so we took an advantage of a state program through the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, the Manoa Innovation Center, and we were able to find great space in there, and they were willing to extend a lease to a small business, which is really great.
Besides the lease itself, what kind of process did you have to go through just to start taking in revenue?
Well, it's hard. I think I've given some thought about this when we were going to be on this program about what the challenges are being a small business in Hawaii and what maybe some of the root causes of that are. I think because it's a particularly difficult state for small businesses, it's a self-fulfilling, unfortunately, difficult cycle where people are we sell to businesses. They're unwilling to trust new businesses because they fail at such a high rate, which leads to them not wanting to trust other new businesses. And it's a self-fulfilling cycle that's very hard to get out of. And so you're trying to convince, the main hurdle that you're getting over when we're talking to other businesses is that we will be around, we will survive. And that's merely out of personal confidence at that point.
Let me ask Kari Waldhaus, you have a UPS store, only a handful of employees. Do you still feel like you're constantly jumping through regulatory hoops?
You know, in the beginning to start, you do have the regulatory stuff that you have to do. I think once you're kind of going, personally for my type of business, we don't have as much of that. But you still have the challenges, you know, he was mentioning about, you know, having to get a lease. So the UPS store is a franchise. That helped me get the lease into my building because even though I'm responsible for it, having that name branding behind it kind of helps, but not everybody wants to be in a franchise.
You know, let me ask you, you also coach small business, and obviously UPS store, a lot of your clients would be small businesses too.
Yes.
What's your observation about the rest of the small business environment? We always hear it's so difficult. What makes it difficult besides sort of the land costs and the stuff we can't control? What about the stuff that maybe government could control?
You know, and that's a hard one because I think everything, there's so many ties into so many different aspects that you have to do, and not everything's an easy answer or an easy fix, and I'm sure, you know, Senator Hawai'i can, you know, attest to that. But some of the challenges I think that are faced is one, getting funding. So a lot of small businesses trying to get started, and even if they get initial funding, trying to keep them going till you can get past that stage where you're kind of breathing easier. So that's kind of a difficult situation. And I think employees, getting good employees, and it depends on the business. I have a really good friend who is an interior decorator, and so she needs a higher level of employee. She wants somebody that she can train, and hired somebody who was so relieved after years of finding somebody, but they couldn't afford to stay in Hawaii, and so she and her husband moved away, and now she's starting the search. So keeping good employees and finding good employees, I think, is one huge challenge, and being able to help them, you know, if they want to live here, how do we provide them a living wage and yet still stay in business?
Here, let me put some of this into perspective about how many people are working for small businesses in Hawaii, and it's actually quite an astounding number. According to the government, 258,000 workers in Hawaii, 258,345 workers in Hawaii are employed by small businesses. That's about half of the state's private workforce. And that's based on businesses of 500 employees or less, which sounds like a big business to me, but by some federal definitions, that's a small business. Now, getting a little bit smaller, if we look, 37% of all firms in Hawaii employ fewer than 100 workers, full-time workers, that is. That's the largest share of small business employment, firms of less than 100 workers, and it's 37% of the businesses. That's based on 100 workers. And now another figure, the state's definition of a small business is a small business with 50 or fewer full-time employees. And let me put this to you, Senator Hawai'i. Is that kind of definitional problem where one government entity says, this is a small business of 25, this is a small business of 50, all these different entities all redefining things? Is that part of why this gets very confusing for people and for legislators too?
What's even more confusing, because my DBED numbers that I got today are a little bit different from what you have there. If the threshold is 100 or more employees, that's only actually 2%, 706 businesses out of the 31,000 registered businesses we have in the state. So you're right that the numbers can vary, but the reality is Hawaii is a very tough place to do business. Whether you're a big corporation or whether you're a mom and pop or a sole proprietor, it's very difficult to do business in here, and the state really has to step up and be more of a conduit for success in this arena.
And then Cam Napier from Pacific Business News, you guys have covered a lot of these regulations.
Sure.
What is your guys' perception about the regulatory environment here when it comes to business?
Well, definitely we hear from business all the time that they feel overtaxed and overregulated. And they're concerned about finding capital and recruitment, retention. Definitely that's an issue. And I think there are indirect ways where things intersect and overlap that people don't think of that would be helpful to small business. We all know there's a housing shortage, and the median price of a single family home is now well over $700,000 on Oahu. So if you're recruiting and you're recruiting someone worth having, well, they've looked up the price of real estate, and they know what they're going to have to spend to make this move to Hawaii. So even though it doesn't ostensibly have anything to do with small business, if city and state officials were working a little faster on housing solutions and kind of
The cost of
loosen
living.
the cost of living. That is the single biggest factor in the cost of living. Groceries are high too. Utilities are high. And that's another thing I think that small business is really watching at the state level is, if you think your home electric bill is high, imagine having an electric bill for a whole commercial operation, right?
And let
So
me
I
ask,
think
oh, sorry. Go
a
ahead.
lot of folks are watching the HECO NextEra deal to see if that goes through and if that might bring some relief on the utility side.
Michael Hernandez-Osorio, your company involves water, which is a product that is pretty highly regulated. Health department regulations, those sorts of things, does those kick into a company that is actually someone like yours?
We're using tap water, so we're not subject to any of that.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to worry about the health department stuff.
No.
Senator McKay, what kind of complaints do you get from businesses about regulation in particular?
They feel that they're overburdened, the permitting process is far too slow, and of course everyone complains about the tax structure. But one thing that people don't always talk about, but I think is important, is infrastructure. Right? You need capital, you need workforce, and you need infrastructure. I mean, look at our broadband capacity. To me, the broadband is our superhighway into being competitive worldwide. Our broadband here is expensive and it's slow. I mean, if they can get broadband at 1 gig for $70 in Kansas City, and we're paying $800 for that, an equivalent amount of 1 gig capacity, that itself is a huge burden for a business company, especially one that's trying to embrace innovation. So infrastructure is another thing that the state really needs to invest in as well.
I do have a couple of questions already in from viewers, and I appreciate very much getting them so quickly. Both of them are on the same theme from Waipio Valley. The key to help small business is to downsize government, lower fees and taxes, downsize the debt. And Dean from Honokaa says, downsize government, there will be less taxes. Glenn Wakai, Senator.
Well, firing people probably isn't going to be in the game plan in the near future. But
Firing state workers.
Firing state workers, sorry, is probably not going to be in the discussion anytime soon. But I'm a believer that we can reinvent government through technology. We can expect our employees to do a lot more with the use of not having just people pushing papers, just something as simple as an electronic signature that the state finally embraced this past year has reduced a lot of just paperwork and just busy work. So we have to get a lot more efficient, and the state is well underway in going down that route. But I will say, though, that the biggest piece of legislation that the legislature passed last year, which I thought was astonishing, was the privatization of the Maui hospital. That was a movement into, people complain about bigger and bigger government. That was a point where government actually got smaller. 1,400 workers are now going to be Kaiser employees. So in some areas, government can get smaller, and I think there's a rebalancing that we're witnessing now after government. I agree with the viewers. It was and still is too top heavy.
Cam Napier, how much do you think the tax structure has to do with suppressing or being a burden on both big and small government?
Well,
the excise tax in
certainly,
particular.
and the general excise tax and the way it's pyramided, it's not just a sales tax. It's applied at every step of the way as material becomes a product and is sold, and so it piles up, and it's a regressive tax. And often I think business ends up going into a defensive mode just to keep it from getting higher. One of the success stories for the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii this year was stopping 2 increases to the GET. There was a proposal for a dedicated GET increase for education and one for senior care, and those are both very, very worthy social causes. But I think some people might have seen the dedicated fee for rail and thought, oh, great, we can just start adding things onto the GET.
Great idea. Yeah.
And those 2 alone would have taken it from 4% to over 6%, and a 6% that would be tacked on at every step of a business's process.
But we've also heard that, and the Senator might be able to go with this, the legislators love the excise tax because they tend to say, well, we only have a 4.5% or 4% tax, where you look at Washington State.
Right.
But in fact, a lot of it is hidden.
Right. They also like to say that our 8 million visitors a year, are paying a lot of it, which they are. Yeah, taxation is definitely an issue that business worries about.
Kari, let me ask you, because there's a specific caller wants to know about neighbor islands. Do you feel neighbor island businesses are being given equal access to state government? Are you hearing that it's more difficult out there to get to the person you need to fix a problem, like a permitting problem or an issue like that?
I'm going to say yes. It's a yes or no answer to that because it kind of depends on what it is. I do think that neighbor island businesses face a lot of challenges. We can't have access to stuff that, on Oahu you can get. So even getting supplies over, I'm going to use my store as an example where, a UPS store on Oahu can drive down and, pick up boxes. I've got to get a big shipment that gets on a Young Brothers that by the time I order it and get it takes over a week. And it costs a lot of money. So we have those challenges. But as far as, legislation, part of it's county-wide because each county has, so when you're building out a business and you're having to deal with permitting, that's more of a county situation. I know,
Well, the counties, we could talk about the counties too. It's fine.
because personally in Hawaii County, the permitting process and going through getting my store open, I felt was so antiquated. It was unbelievable. I actually had to get in my car, drive to Kona to get some signatures, drive to Hilo to get signatures because nothing was done online so that I can open my store on time. Everything was done, but I needed the inspections and they needed to sign off on everything, but it can't be done online. So what I've heard from other businesses too is just trying to get open and get through that permitting process for building is real difficult.
Yeah, let me ask, because you mentioned building. What other things did you have to get permits for? I mean, you have to get it.
Well, you have to get the building permit, but even with the UPS store, we had to have the health inspection. You have to have a fire inspection. You have to so one of the things was, what am I going to do with my waste or my trash? And I'm actually in a shopping center that hires out a company, and there's a big dumpster, but I had to go to Hilo to tell them that, to get the signature. So, and if you know the Big Island, that's not an easy drive. It's a long drive. So we have things like that, and I think the biggest issue might be not even knowing who to go to. Because I think a lot, maybe you experience this as well, but we don't necessarily know if we have a problem, who can we actually, talk to? And, I remember actually being at an event when we had, former Governor Abercrombie, and I was building out my store, and I made a comment to him, and he said he would do something, which really impressed me. At that point, I didn't really need his help, but it was really nice to have that help. But it's like, who do we go to if we need something, and who do we go to get that information? And I know as a business owner, whenever they talk about excise tax, we all cringe. Right. It's a scary thought, and I coach some businesses that actually get paid through sources on the mainland, so they can't collect a tax. So they're paying it out of their own pocket. Okay. And that makes it real difficult.
Michael, in your business, have you run into similar kinds of challenges on Oahu?
I mean, we had to go in person to get our GT license, and there were various hurdles. For us, I don't think that has not been, the regulations have not been, because we're serving businesses, we're not serving consumers, we didn't have a build out. We've kind of avoided, I think, a lot of those very specific issues in terms of regulation. The high cost of living, I think, is something that we do deal with. My personal opinion is I think high quality employees, many of them are not, because they're under such stress of a high cost of living, they're not willing to take a chance on a small business as much, and it puts you at a huge disadvantage for hiring. But
we'll talk more about maybe possible solutions for that, or at least steps forward. But let me ask Senator Wakai, you mentioned technology as being able to help out a lot of what Kari mentioned, but this issue about the overall cost of doing business in Hawaii, is it your impression that people will complain and be very concerned about these regulatory things, but really their big problem is the cost of just doing anything in Hawaii?
Oh, yes. I mean, the pocketbook drives a lot of our daily decisions. So it doesn't matter if we clean up all of the regulatory side. If we don't affect the cost of items here, we're not going to hear a lessening of the volume of criticisms. I want to follow up on what Cam was mentioning about how the Chamber lauded themselves for being defensive on 2 GET increases. I really would like to see the Chamber and the business community start playing some offense. It's always defense. It's always, let's stop this, let's stop that, let's stop this. Somehow, in this next few years, we need to change that so that we actually maybe drive down the cost. I mean, Senator Sloan and I introduced a bill and we had a hearing on getting rid of the corporate income tax. And there was not really a chorus of support for that, but it would affect everybody who does business in Hawaii, some to a large degree, some to a small degree. But we really need to start having the business community, small and large, start playing some offense and changing legislation, because I need to have more support if I'm going to go down the road of digging into our $13.7 billion budget.
I think we will get into quite a bit more later on in the show about what kind of strategies might be good to actually address some of these things. Right now, let me remind our viewers that we want you to call, tweet, or email your questions and comments. We will be responding to some of those questions as soon as we can in just a few minutes. Now, let's turn to another major area of concern for businesses, healthcare costs. Now, let me ask you, Michael, what kind of insurance do you end up having to provide for your workers?
We again, in order to be competitive and hire the best people, or hire anyone really for our business, but we are trying to, hire the best people that we can. We have to be more generous, and it's an incredible burden.
Give me a sense of how much it costs you to provide insurance for an employee.
It depends on the age of the employee. That's the only thing that they current. So if you're trying to hire somebody that's more experienced, that's going to cost you a whole lot more than it is to hire somebody that's earlier career and younger. But yet you're not supposed to age discriminate. That would be illegal. But it's a big difference.
Kari Waldhaus, you mentioned that your company actually was qualified for one of the Affordable Care Act exchanges. Can you tell me what you went through with a little bit of that?
Actually, I had to go through a broker because all the other channels just were impossible for me. And fortunately, I found somebody who could help, sent me the form. The form's not that hard to fill out or to complete, and I think it's not a difficult thing for a lot of businesses to get, but still, and I have younger employees. I have a kind of business where people start out, they're a sales associate. So, but, still it's costing, for 2 people, it's costing me over $700 a month. And that's with the, the benefit. And so, it's still a lot of money to have to pay. And I agree with Mike. We want good employees. And so you have to, I pay 100% of their medical for, the employee. I don't pay for the family. I can't afford that.
When the Affordable Care Act came through, there was a lot of talk about how businesses would have access to tax credits. And I have a graphic that we can show about how this was supposed to work. And basically what the federal government offered a small business for its healthcare tax credit was you had to have less than 25 full-time employees, an average annual salary of those employees of less than $50,000. The employer must pay at least 50% contribution to employee coverage premium, and they must purchase the Affordable Care Act qualified health plan, usually through what's called the SHOP exchange. Now, Cam Napier, what happened to that in Hawaii? Do you remember?
We were covering that quite a bit as the Health Connector was first invented and then shut down by the state as the way that Hawaii was going to implement the Affordable Care Act. The functions of the connector, of that health exchange, best we can tell, got split up among 3 different state departments. DLIR got some, I think DCCA got some, Department of Health got some. SHOPs and its whereabouts, I don't know. The state's been very quiet lately about the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. I think the state's preference is to get a waiver from the federal law.
Get out of it because we have our own prepaid
health care
act.
Right. And that's where they're at.
Senator Wakai, can you give us an update of what's going on? Are we doing better or worse right now in the state, in terms of helping people pay for health insurance?
I think it's just chaos out there. Things were supposed to be going down a yellow brick road. Somehow the yellow brick road just fell apart at the end. So we really don't have a clear game plan on a state and even on the federal level as to where is healthcare in the state as well as America going. We're kind of schizophrenic about healthcare though in Hawaii, right? We're the number one quality of life and healthiest state in America, but we're the costliest state for paying for that position. And as a community, maybe we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to be 25th in the nation in healthcare and pay a lot less for that healthcare? But it seems that a lot of people in Hawaii would like to have good, solid healthcare for the future, which keeps us at the place that we are in today.
You know, Kari Wildhouse, you mentioned that at one point you actually lost your insurance company because of this process. Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
Well, when I first opened up, I was given some options for insurance companies, and so I picked one, and everything was going well. But when the state part of the connector fell apart, that insurance company closed down. I got a letter. I had less than 30 days to find a new insurance company, and it's a huge challenge. And then shopping around, and again, we've discussed the fact that we want to help our employees. We can't compete with everything, but we want to give them something really good like health insurance. But I want to bring up the fact that I think, one thing that would really help is not have the age discrimination on health insurance. And I don't know if that's fixable because, again, we're not allowed to discriminate for age in hiring. Mm-hmm. But the older an employee is, the more expensive their insurance is. And, I'm older. I hate to have that discrimination on me that
I'm right
somebody
there with you, yeah.
wouldn't hire me because I'm too expensive. And again, I've been fortunate. My oldest employee is 28. That helps keep my health insurance down. But and I can't even get my own insurance through my own company, because if I get my insurance through my company, everybody's age goes up. I make it more expensive. So I'm a business owner who can't afford their own insurance, and that's a really bad thing for business owners.
Yeah, that's part of the problem is the complexity, and when this manifests itself in ways that are unexpected. People talk nationwide about wage stagnation. The pay of workers has not been going up, but if you're a business owner, you know that the cost of having employees most certainly has gone up.
Well, the cost of
you just can't put it in their paycheck because you're giving it to insurance companies instead.
Well, and people who are getting a rise in their paycheck are paying that to insurance companies or to doctors too at the same time.
Right.
But let me ask you, that brings up the issue of a Hawaii-specific issue, the lack of competition in the insurance business. How big an issue is that for the business in what you've covered, Ken Napier?
That has not really come up as much as a reason for the cost. Especially with the Affordable Care Act, a lot of things were mandated by law to be covered, in part to eliminate discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions. But insurance is all about risk, and the insurance companies, if told they need to cover riskier people, need to be able to pay for that care, and so what they charge people goes up, and that seems to be independent of how many players are in the market. I know on a national level, one of the alternatives to the Affordable Care Act that was proposed was to allow interstate competition for health insurance, the same way you see for automotive insurance. And if the companies could compete in broader markets and have a healthier competition nationwide, that might overall bring down the cost.
Let me ask Senator Wakai. I mean, in your experience in the legislature, you watched this. It wasn't necessarily in your committee, but it was certainly something to see. Is it your impression that people are open to the idea of bringing more competition into the local health insurance market, or is that just get bottled up all the time?
No, I think that's something we try to encourage, but for whatever reasons, they don't come. The insurance companies like to have captive insurance here. We're great at being a repository for a lot of other insurance providers, but just not health care. But one thing that I think we should contemplate here is we are never, as a society in America, going to get a handle on healthcare until we decide how far are we going to chase immortality in our community. How much are we willing to spend? Did God put us on this earth to live 120 years? And if some people think that, then we're going to chase that and throw all the money and healthcare developments at that. If some of us think that, no, 80, 90 years old is a good lifespan, then we're going to adjust our healthcare there. But somehow, as a society, we have to contemplate when is our life expectancy and quality of life and how is it affordable to us? When we get a handle on that, then we can have a discussion on how we're going to attack this issue.
You know, another big issue in Hawaii, and I imagine this is true everywhere, is that our health insurance system is fragmented. There's workers' comp insurance, there's regular health insurance, there's no-fault car insurance.
Right.
And Michael Fernandez, sorry, in your business, you have to provide workers' comp and everything else. That's another added cost. And in Hawaii, how is workers' comp compared to other places? Do you have a sense of it?
I don't, to be honest. It's one of the many costs of doing business. Yeah, car insurance and general liability and
PDI.
yeah, it adds up.
Whole list.
Do you know, Cam Napier, do we have a sense of whether Hawaii is competitive on those things, or is it?
No, that I haven't looked into lately, the workers' comp.
Let me ask
issue
Glenn Wakaya, have you seen it? Is there a figure for whether, I know that we had a big reform of workers' comp quite a few years ago, and that was all great. It went down for business, or at least got under control, but then you hear a lot of workers complaining that if they go into the workers' comp system, they don't get very good care. Do you hear that a lot?
Yes, frequently. And when we addressed workers' comp a number of years ago, we created HEMIC, right, a quasi-state entity to help increase competition in that arena. And maybe in healthcare, it's not certainly not a slam dunk, but maybe we should contemplate a quasi-government-run entity, because workers' comp. HEMIC did what it was supposed to do in sharpening people's pencils and lowering the cost of workers' comp insurance for all businesses. And maybe the state should look into that as helping all of the small businesses provide for their employees.
Okay, let me move on now to our next section. We're going to start talking about another big issue of concern for small businesses, which is the minimum wage. Now, Kari Walhus, do you pay minimum wage on the Big Island?
No, I pay a lot more. Partly, we live in Waimea. That's where my store is, in Commonwealth on the Big Island. And it's not cheap to live there. But to keep good employees, I have to pay a lot more. And, you know, I have kind of a good I believe in my employees, and I'm going to invest in them at my own cost and my own risk. But I want to keep them, because trying to train them to do what they do, it's very difficult and takes a long time. And so I have to pay a lot more. I feel, but I don't want to be told to pay more than I'm paying. And I think I pay a pretty fair wage to my employees.
With the other businesses that you work with, I mean, are there many that actually are paying what is the state minimum wage, or is for the most part people pay more?
Paying more. I think to keep good employees, you have to. And so again, it's another, and it's several things. One is to keep good employees, because you put a lot of time and effort into training them. One is to be competitive so that they don't go out and get jobs somewhere else where they can get, paid more. And again, it depends too, with a lot of the businesses I work with, depends on, what skill and expertise and education that they need for doing each job. And you have to pay, you got to help them to survive and live, but even a good wage doesn't necessarily help them.
Let me ask Michael Hernandez, sorry, your company, it's not a minimum wage company.
No.
But in terms of your strategy on wages, you were talking earlier about how you have to pay more. How do you balance that, though? How much you can pay versus what you can afford to pay?
It's difficult. It's just
What kind of margins do you work with?
Well, when you're first starting out, they're negative. I mean, you're not making money for the first couple of years, and you're trying to do what you can to keep the employees that you've got and not lose them to somebody who can pay more. And you're hoping that they're going to come along for the ride, and until you're profitable and you can pay them more.
Let me go to another graphic now to talk about sort of the perspective of the minimum wage here. And I think this kind of goes to directly what you guys are saying. If we could get this graphic up, it basically, across the top line, you see number 4, California, number 2, New York, number 1, Hawaii. That's basically our costs of living. Those are among the top places for cost of living. But you know, California's minimum wage in 2016 is $10. In New York's is $10.50 in the city. In Hawaii, it's $8.50. So we're really not keeping up with the cost of living with minimum wage. Glenn Wakai, Senator Wakai, what is the dynamic like every time someone comes in and says we got to get a living wage, we got to get a higher cost of living adjustment to our minimum wage?
3 years ago, we increased the minimum wage, and we really addressed the bottom 4% of the wage earners in the state. I've been trying to push the discussion to the other end of the spectrum, to create innovative jobs that pay quality wages for our employees. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation, but what kind of jobs are we providing for our neighbors, right? You have to patchwork 2-3 jobs to make it in Hawaii. I think we should really move towards getting jobs that pay north of $80,000 a year, so people can have one job, take their kids to basketball, take their kids to and have fun with their children. But it's hard to do that now, and by focusing on the minimum wage, we're really not moving the needle on growing our economy.
Cam Napier, in terms of the coverage you've done and what you've seen with minimum wage, what are the dynamics in the political debate over minimum wage? And can you really, what Senator Wakai is talking about, can you really have that expectation when so much of the economy is dominated by service work?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, the minimum wage is not something we're terribly worried about. What we see coming is a tsunami of potential problems from a federal rule that was just passed in the spring that has to do with overtime pay for white-collar workers. It's a change to the Fair Labor Standard Act, and it raises the threshold of when someone qualifies for overtime from $23,660 to almost $48,000. And you know, nationwide, as many as 4 million people may suddenly, on one day, become eligible for overtime unless their salary is raised above the threshold. And by some estimates, as many as 60% of businesses in Hawaii are going to be affected by this. And there's a society of human resource managers that estimate that just complying with this new federal rule will cost businesses $600 million nationwide when it goes into effect. That's the time of all the managers who have to read the rule, understand the rule, implement timekeeping, et cetera, et cetera. The additional compensation could be $1.8 billion. On one hand, it looks like a win. Look at all these people who are going to get paid more.
But then people get shifted around in their
what businesses
hours.
say is, if we have to absorb that cost, it's going to be a long time before people get raises. It's going to be a long time before we add bodies. People may even lose jobs as a result of this mandated thing. And it's interesting because this and something else I'd like to talk about later, because it gets to your point about business and government working together. You know, it's an example of something that was not really discussed through the usual democratic process, right? It's not a law. It's an administrative rule.
Let's get to that in our next section,
yeah,
which was coming up in just a minute. But let me just ask Kari Waldhaus, when you hear talk about, you mentioned that you don't really like being told what to pay your employees, but you know, in some places they're hitting this minimum wage, living wage at $15 an hour, for example. What Cam Napier was mentioning about the more generous overtime rules. When wages go up in that way, like what would happen if all of a sudden you had to pay $15 or $16 or $17 to your employees? How would your business adjust?
I would have to get rid of employees. And, you know, again,
But
I do think we have.
Can't you just increase your prices?
I could, but then I'd lose customers because, you know, there's that whole domino effect of how it gets affected. And, you know, sometimes owning a business like I have, some people will say, well, we're expensive because we've got, you know, to ship something to the mainland. And just the cost of running the business and having, you know, the big lease expense. If, you know, again, forced into a situation, and again, I feel like I'm very generous with my employees because they for what they do, I think they make a good wage. I think part of it too is educating business owners on how to really do a compensation to benefit the employees who work hard. Where it's a little bit more our choice. But I do want my employees to also be able to survive, because if they don't, they will go out and get that second job or third job, or they will go get another job, somewhere else. But when it really boils down to it, I can only, cut employees so much before I have to actually close the store, because there's a certain amount of hours you have to work, and I can't do them all, and I can't run them by myself. So there's got to be a balance between, helping the employees so that they can have that living wage, and helping the employer stay afloat so that there's jobs. Because if suddenly we all have to pay so much more, what's going to happen is you'll have the unemployment rate that we're so proud of will increase, because people will start letting people go, or freeze hiring new people.
Right.
Okay, let me start. We've got a lot of questions, and we've got about 20 minutes to try and get through a bunch of them. Let me try this for Senator Wakai. Would it be helpful if more affordable retail spaces were easily rentable? It would encourage more mom and pop retail. We're getting a lot of people saying, is there something that I guess the government or the government private sector can do together to generate spaces like the space that Michael's in, where businesses can thrive without struggling with the lack of land and lack of space?
I don't know if the government wants to go in there and start manipulating what the retail space landscape should be. As Michael is a beneficiary of, we have some space available. There's 40 other businesses in the Manoa Innovation Center that get cut rent, get utilities, get conference rooms, get mail service, get a lot of government assistance to kind of grow their company. I don't think I would be super fond of the idea of government getting in there and almost like rent control. Hasn't worked in other areas, and I don't think it would work here.
Yeah, we have so many people asking about that. Another person frustrated about a high cost of real estate suitable for a retail business. Cam Napier, let me ask, what is the situation now? Are people building spaces for business now, or are they just all building condos?
They are. Oh, no. In fact, the new model for condos is to have retail on the ground floor, to have a more interesting urban environment, right? That's what we're seeing in Kaka'ako, for example, in the Howard Hughes projects and other projects from other landowners in the area. Retail, in fact, is booming. Kamakana Ali'i is opening up soon out in Kapolei, and it's, when that thing's fully built out, I think it's going to be nearly the size of Ala Moana Center. So there is a lot of space. Otherwise, the cost, it's a function of the market, and there's only so much land to go around. It's certainly making it possible to, well, I'll tell you, construction costs have been skyrocketing, and that has been cutting into the amount of retail that might otherwise be built. PBN has reported on a couple of shopping center developments that just gave up. They said this project no longer pencils out because the construction costs are too high. We're not going to make any money.
Another caller asked, what is being done for individuals interested in doing business from home? How can state provide incentives to provide working from home? And let me ask this actually, Michael Hernandez-Soria, is your business the kind of business where people could be decentralized and working from home and then come together on a particular job? Have you ever looked at your space requirements and thought, maybe if I get these people working outside, I could do something more? Or is that just too hard to do?
Anything's possible, right? I'm reluctant to say there's no way that could be done. I think it would probably be a lot less efficient. It is. I've seen models on the mainland where they've done things to cover a wide area. They've had people work out of a home that's very remote, that's like 2 hours away, but we don't really have that issue here in Hawaii. There are certain, like, salespeople sometimes will work from home for an afternoon, or there's no need for them to come into the office every day and be there 40 hours a week.
Which probably have to still have some kind of space for them when they do.
Right, and we need conference space in order to have meetings and the company to get on the same page and understand what's happening with certain accounts.
Our question, Senator, was towards government. Is there things going on in reform? What kind of things are happening there?
people should be more aware of all the assortment of loan programs we have. We just instituted last year a manufacturing grant program. So if you're at home, you want to be a baker, but you need a more industrial-sized oven than what you have at home now, we have a or grant program for that. So the public should be aware that government is there to assist you, and there are funds available for individuals to get moving, but they just need to make the call and put in an application and ask for everything from grants and loans to tax credits for their business.
Let me throw out some more. We've gotten actually some votes for more for regulation among our callers. Given Hawaii's fragile environment, isn't there a place for some reasonable regulations? And here's another one. I've been a chiropractic therapist for years. I have no problem with regulations. It's the Republican right wing putting out disinformation. So basically saying it's not that bad. We can handle this. And then without regulation, it would just lead to total chaos. And one more person. As a small business owner, Hawaii is rated worse for doing business. We need to elect new political leaders who understand the needs and struggles of a small business owner. Vote. Glenn McKay, let me ask you, among your colleagues in the legislature and yourself, how much small business experience is there? Do you talk among yourselves, and do you get that perspective in there?
I have to say that the voice of business is very meek at the legislature. It needs to be amplified. Some of the commentary there about regulation, I mean, the fact that the state, you look at the regulatory branch of government, DCCA, the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and if you ask them, how do you determine what the cost is for a real estate license, a cosmetology license, they can't tell you why they charge whatever they charge. Well, we've done it for 20 years. As a community, we have to ask them, let's be a little bit more strategic. I don't mind paying the regulatory cost, but tell me what I'm getting for it. And the state can't answer that. We owe it to the public to be able to answer that you, a realtor, are paying $400 a year for a real estate license for 2 years because blah, 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 blah. This is the cost. You might not like it, but at least I can legitimize the cost to you. Right now, I can't tell a realtor why he's paying $400 every 2 years.
Do you think that part of the issue is that the state is not businesslike in the way it collects money and tracks money? Everything goes into the general fund. You know, you've got a lot of special funds that get criticized, but that sounds exactly like what we've heard all the time, is that those regulations are basically just hidden taxes. So a lot of those fees are just hidden taxes.
Right. And we owe it to the public to tell us why we're charging them. I want to bring up one thing. Yesterday, we had an interesting hearing about the future of land leases for the state. The state oversees 4.1 million acres throughout the islands, and most of it unusable, conservation and such. But we have a good chunk of land that should be leasable. We bring in $15 million in lease payments. To me, there's something wrong with that entire setup. Why? Because we're not looking at all of our state lands, where the strategic locations are, and making those individuals pay a proper lease for those lands. 4.1 million acres, and we're getting $15 million in lease payments for the state? Yeah. Something's wrong there.
You know, Cam Napier, you want to go ahead? You want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And to some of the callers, you know, business is not asking to have no regulation by any means. Businesses need a fair environment to compete with each other. They need to know that their competitor is not cheating them, not cheating on their taxes, on the rules that apply to everybody. What they're looking for is sensible regulation that makes sense. So to your point, if businesses understood why things were the way they were, or if they saw state agencies actually passing their audits, for example, they would feel more confident. Or if they saw better customer service. So your experience of driving from office to office on the Big Island, you know, on Oahu, just to get a building permit. I asked one of my reporters this afternoon as I was getting ready for this, hey, what's the latest you've heard on how long it takes to get a building permit? He said, oh, there's that place downtown that took over a Subway's, and it took them a year.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
It takes months, it takes weeks. There are cities on the mainland where you get a building permit in a matter of days. And as you know, if you're starting a business and you're doing a build out, if you're waiting months just to get started, you're carrying all these costs of starting a business you can't even start getting revenue on, and government can't start taxing you on. So everybody's getting hurt by a delay that no one understands why it even is happening.
You know, an interesting question that comes in, and again, we're talking about the business climate, a lot of things that are burdens on the business climate, the cost, the lack of land, as you mentioned, the land reform issues. Here's another one. When you look at the parking lots of the military base exchanges, they're all full. Doesn't this have a negative impact on local businesses where they aren't shopping? I guess Candace would be maybe appropriate for you. Our economy is just, there's the military, they're somewhat separate from our economy. There's the tourists are in their economy. I mean, is there anything in the horizon that indicates that this is going to be shaken up at all?
No, we just did a cover story recently on the state of the military in Hawaii, and there are some concerns that the military may reduce its footprint, but with the pivot to the Pacific, it seems unlikely. In fact, the number of Navy personnel has only gone up. The exchanges and the commissary do carry local products. And they hire local civilians to work there. So it's not like they're entirely separate from the community. The shipyard is the single largest industrial employer, and talk about jobs that are far above minimum wage. If you're an engineer working on nuclear submarines, you're making a pretty decent salary.
Let me get the perspective of our two business owners on this question here. If we were to go to a single-payer universal health care system like Canada, it would take a big burden off of small business. Kari, you want to go there first?
Going to ask me first?
Sure.
That's a really loaded question, because I think there's, again, back to, the cause and effect and all the dominoes that get into place. So in a way, yes, that would be good, but would that be good for the population as a whole? And that's, again, a very debatable, because some people in Canada don't like their healthcare system. So I don't know if that's a simple answer. And as a business owner, and I kind of want to speak from my own personal opinion, we definitely have struggles, and we were talking earlier that you can't be a business owner and be meek. You've got to be really a strong person to keep going and get through the hard times. You have to be in it for more than money, because that's not the benefits you get from it. You have to have a passion. You have to be, have a reason that you want to do it. You're trying to, better yourself. You're trying to give jobs to other people. So we're not looking for, handouts or anything to, fairy dust that'll make life better. But all the little things that, hold us back definitely can be a big push. And it doesn't have to be any big, magic pill, but little things, and I'm just going to say thank you to the state legislature for the Big Island appropriating the money for our airport. Now that, and we talked about tourism and the military, that directly affects tourism on the Big Island, because now we can have direct international flights if, once that gets going. But we can also, it helps us as a small business. The military helps us as a small business because the money flows.
Sure.
And it,
Let me ask Michael Hernandez-Sorio, you mentioned earlier that shipping's a big issue for your company. What would you like to see change that would help you in that cost area?
I think a number of the issues that you're bringing up, I think when it comes to all of this stuff, what I look for and I would hope is that I'm playing on a level playing field, and that I'm not competing against people that have an advantage that I don't. And when it comes to shipping, Hawaii is an island. We're a chain of islands, but we're an island. That's a reality. We are thousands of miles away, and it's going to be expensive to get stuff here, granted. But it's even more expensive to get things here because of federal regulations that are in place, i.e. the Jones Act. But then on top of that, I don't want to mention his name, but he's a pretty large business here in Hawaii, and he serves the military. And if you look at what Costco has to pay in shipping versus what he has to pay in shipping to bring food in, and he's many, many times my size, he's competing with an arm tied behind his back compared to what large businesses are able to negotiate or what the military is able to negotiate. So if you're talking about people shopping at the Navy X or on base, there's probably a reason for that. Things are cheaper there because they're not paying the same shipping that local businesses are.
Okay, we've only got a couple more minutes. Cam Napier, let me give you the first shot at this. What do you think, big picture, would make the biggest difference to our business climate if someone could throw a switch and fix one thing?
Well, I think if people in the government could understand where business was coming from a little bit better, that would make a huge difference. And I would like to mention, you were talking about business and government collaborating. Just this afternoon, I got a message that we're going to see a rally tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the fish auction, organized by the fishing industry, by the restaurant industry. Former Governor George Ariyoshi is going to be there, and it's a fascinating instance of business and public officials getting together to protest a potential federal rule change that would enlarge the area of the ocean where there's a fishing ban. And I've never seen anything like this before, where all these interests are getting together on one topic.
Senator Bukai, last shot, about 30 seconds. What do you think, and what do you think might actually happen in the legislature that would help businesses? What's the biggest thing, do you think?
We need to hear from the people. We have 502,000 people employed in the private sector. I hear from people only griping about loud dogs and streetlights that are out. I'd like to hear from some of these people who have their livelihood based on their employment, and I don't hear from them. So I really would hope that one day people would wake up, people who work for big businesses and small business, and tell me how they're affected by whatever policy we're contemplating.
Thanks so much, all of you. And this program maybe will take a step towards that kind of voice in the community. PBS Hawaii next week, we're going to be off for the next 2 Thursdays in July so that we can bring you coverage of the Republican and Democratic conventions. We'll return with a special election edition featuring the leading candidates for the Honolulu mayor's race at a special time. That's Monday, August 1st at 8 p.m. We'll also resume at our regular time on Thursday, August 4th with a look at some of this year's high-profile legislative races. I'm Daryl Huff. Ahui ho.